Welcome to Bobcast number 3. I'm Dean Arnold, your host. This is Bob LaBelle, the featured celebrity of the Bobcast. Today's Bobcast.com, in case you are looking for us on the World Wide Web, but probably just under Bobcast in the various search engines for podcasts. So here we are, and how you doing?
Excellent. It's a good morning.
Excellent. It's a good morning.
How about you, sir?
Very good. We had a shoot last night, a video shoot with 2 actors and 6 crew people, and it was went till about midnight, and
Whoa.
It was very cool. It was very dynamic. I expect it to be very good. The name of it, working name of it, we think is Cool Beard, for which I am an expert to write about.
All right.
But yeah, so that was good. But I was up late, so I slept in. Why are you doing good?
Sleeping in's a good thing. Well, mainly because today's the day that the Lord has made. And the Bible says we should rejoice and be glad in it. And it's a good day. I have had some physical issues in my body, and they're getting better. So that's always a good thing. And I'm just rejoicing in God's blessings of a new day.
Well, that was wonderfully general, but I do like the health part. And perhaps there's a couple things that you just can't divulge that have gotten you excited this morning. Because I didn't get any specifics, really.
Well, I have had nerve damage in my feet from a reaction to a antibiotic called a fluoroquinolone. And it's caused neuropathy in the feet. And they claim it's permanent neuropathy, but I've had some help on several different counts, and they're a lot better. It's getting better. So it's been a long time thing that we've been working on, and some of what we're doing now is working. And some of that is daily prayer about it. So you never can tell what exactly is working, but it's all in the Lord's hands. And Psalm 37 says if we commit our way to Him, He establishes our path. And so I trust that that we're blaming the success on God, and I think He's worthy of it. So.
Nice. No, that does make sense. And
is that more specific?
That's more specific.
Okay.
And as those of us who've been around for a while have walked on this journey with you of the neuropathy. I've had a little myself over the years, but really only about a 6-month spell. Oh, now we're a bunch of old guys sitting here talking about our
aches and pains.
Yeah, and I egged it on. But I will say that I was on a huge hike in the woods, massive like Rock City type of side of the mountain around here in Chattanooga. Now I'm feeling like a young guy. I'm a young guy. I'm hiking in the mountains, and but there was no path. It was just it was wildness, and I have all my life playing basketball and stuff. I have had a tendency to be prone to sprain my ankle, and so walking around with these rocks everywhere and stuff, it's just like it's the simplest things you take for granted, like not a road, not a dirt road, but just enough of a semblance of a path or a succession of rocks that you're not going to like sprain your ankle every 10 feet. And I thought about those same verses you were quoting, that he will keep your foot from turning on the path, or is it, something like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Good. Okay, good news. All right, so we are going to get into some Bobcast content today. Let's just forge right into it. We're going to talk about advertising, which is a very laden with dynamics. But we're going to go ahead.
It definitely is.
Definitely is. And we're going to talk about a phrase we've used around here that we probably have to not say it exactly this way, but for internal purposes. The greatest, largest?
Greatest, largest, and we landed on biggest. Is biggest a word?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it is.
Yeah.
The big share.
Yeah.
Since we use the term the big share, why don't you help us make the big share the biggest share by getting involved today?
So what is this slogan called? The biggest what?
The biggest share?
No. The biggest ad campaign.
Oh, the biggest media campaign for Christ. And we say media campaign because advertising, it's really a big, giant ad campaign, but sometimes the ads are videos. So, it's a media campaign, it's an ad campaign. A lot of times ads are thought of as negative. People pay an extra X dollars a month on their, music service on their phone because they don't want ads. On the other hand, some people I talked to said the reason they watch the Super Bowl is not for the game, but for the ads. So that balances out the negative for ads with the positive. But nevertheless, advertising is a way to reach 90+% of the population. And that's what gets me excited. Is for years we called on people.
Let me stop you on that.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting into the meat of it. So I want to lay the groundwork here.
Sure.
What we're talking about here is Bob's had a vision for Come On, Let's Go for years now to launch or execute the largest media campaign for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest, largest, greatest.
That all works.
It all works. Okay, so I'm going to say largest. So to launch and execute the largest media campaign for Christ in history, and so that's a phrase we've been massaging and bandying about for 10 years now, and so that's what we're talking about today. We'll get into some stuff like the word advertising versus media, and some other things that are related to it. Wow. I don't know. We can definitely hear a ton of rain coming down just outside our window here, and you might not be able to hear it on the show, but it's.
It sounds like it's coming in.
Yeah, it's kind of cool though. So kind of refreshing, kind of like broadcasting by a waterfall. But first, let's talk about if we're going to have the largest media campaign in history. What are some of the ones in the past that you can think of that we would be comparing ourselves with?
Well, if we compare to media campaigns for Christ,
Yes.
They're limited, very limited. There was one done, I think, in the 70s that a few of our viewers may remember, and there were billboards and TV ads that said, "I found it."
Yeah, the viewers who struggle with neuropathy would probably remember this one.
Yeah.
I found it. Yeah, for some reason, Bob, I don't know why, but 1973 is I'm fixated on that date. I think that's the year it was, and I remember being a kid, and I think for some reason my association with that campaign, there were bumper stickers everywhere that said, "I found it." Dean Jones, who was a big actor back in the day, did a lot of Disney movies and stuff. He was the face of the movement. And if you inquired, what does this mean? I found it. You find out it's Christ and being born again. But I remember for some reason at basketball games, my older brother, played for the high school basketball team. So I'd have been about 7th grade, and he'd have been a senior in high school. And we always go to the packed gym for the big basketball games. And I remember the "I found it" stuff being all over the gym. And things were a little different back then. Bob didn't really grow up evangelical, so he wouldn't be able to relate to it as much. Maybe you can, but if you grew up evangelical Christian, the 60s and 70s were very different than they are now. On a cultural end, there wasn't the persecution that we sometimes feel like we get for our beliefs, on the culture war stuff. But from a just, what do I want to say? It's almost like, I think of like broadcast news, NBC, CBS, ABC. Everything was controlled back then, and there was like a one narrative, which was like where Americans were Christians, this, that, the other, or not Christians, where Americans were, we we won World War II and we want to be rich and prosperous and this kind of stuff. But you didn't talk about being a Christian. You didn't talk about Jesus. You just didn't. Those messages weren't allowed in. Okay, today they totally are. Now there's not a majority of the population vying for that, so you don't hear it that much. But it's not like it's like intentionally screened out or anything like that. But back then it was, and I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this, but it just was that kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden, this "I found it" thing showed up.
Right.
And I'm seeing it all over the basketball gym. You know, with the secular fans of back in the day, where that message just never got in anywhere. You never saw anything like that except at a church.
Right.
Respond.
Well, that's so true. That's it's good recollection of 1973. I'm not sure I could have done that well to pinpoint the year. I did guess it was probably early 70s, but it was a great campaign. There have been
TV ads.
Yeah, TV ads, billboards. I honestly don't recall another
Seems like there's one more we're forgetting.
concerted effort.
I think there's two. No?
Golly, I thought that was the only one. No, there was just a few years back the God billboards said the wedding was great. Now invite me to the marriage. Signed God.
Yeah, that was a billboard campaign, but it seems to me that there's one other kind of initiative push that happened back in the day, maybe a little bit after I found it. But if we can't remember it, Bob, it must not have been that powerful.
Well, I mean, there was God Has a Wonderful Plan for Your Lives on Four Spiritual Laws tracks handed out by thousands of campus crusaders.
That's not a multimedia campaign.
No, it really isn't.
So with that having been established, that there hasn't been a lot of blatantly Christian advertising campaigns that have happened, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about how you got to wanting to use advertising? Why? What does advertising provide? You've already touched on it, but kind of give us the longer spiel now.
Well,
tell us the story about the girl running and all that.
Yeah, well, we've been in commercial radio for a lot of years, and our sales reps go out and talk about creating top-of-mind awareness through advertising. And any good media sales rep lets people know that their ad can reach 90+% of the population. And so, I'm running into people at Starbucks and talking to people that tell me they never heard the gospel in the buckle of the Bible Belt till they were 20 years old. They did other things on the weekends. They went to the lake with the family. They didn't go to church. And so I'm seeing this huge need to reach people for Christ that have never heard a clear presentation. And some of that's because of intentional avoidance, and I think we talked about that the other week. And so there's an opportunity to reach people, and advertising is a great way to do it. And I'm watching TV, I guess it was 10 years ago, late at night, and there's a commercial comes on after a break, and young lady's running, jogging in the rain, and she's got the gear on for a professional runner or whatever, and she's running in slow motion, but tears streaming down her face, and there's some mood music playing as she's running and crying, and the announcer comes on and says, "Life's too short to run alone." This message brought to you by, should I say who? Yeah, by the Latter-day Saints. And so
The Mormons.
And so I see that ad campaign, and I say to myself, it was a great ad, by the way. It really did wonders. It reached me, and it caught my attention, and I'm sure it did many others. And I said to myself, that's a great ad. Why can't we do this? We being the church, the Christian church, and not necessarily the Mormons. And kudos to them for doing a great job, but I'm saying, why can't we, the evangelical Christians? And I felt like the answer was we can, but there were some obstacles, and that's kind of where we got started. And I started thinking about that and praying about that, and the more I prayed about it, the more I realized that I felt God was leading us at Partners for Christian Media to pull off a huge ad campaign for Christ. And so that's what we have started several years back, and we're getting geared up, and should we talk a little bit about who we've already reached and what our targets are? Or?
Sure.
Our first year, I went out and knocked on doors of some philanthropic-minded Christian business people in the community, and we raised $60,000, and we spent, this is back a few years ago, Dean, so it's before digital took over. So we spent $60,000 on traditional advertising, mainly on billboards. And we spent about $1 per person that viewed the stories. And so we had, for $60,000, we had 64,000 people view our Christian stories, our great God stories, online. They, got it from the billboard. They went online and looked up ComeOnLet'sGo.com. 64,000 views from 123 countries and 50 states, just from having billboards in our area here between, basically the MSA.
I think you have to say 123 countries and territories.
Yes,
because you get zapped by the people who say there's only 110 countries in the world.
Well, now that we're up to 210, we have to
that's
say
what I meant.
that.
210, 223, whatever.
Now we do that because it's 210 countries and territories, but in our first year it was 123 countries. So
he's on it.
We're okay there. So, but so that was our first year, and fast forward to where we are today, we just pulled off a nearly 250,000 views in January of this year. And last year, in 12 months, we had better than 1 million new viewers, and so it's working. It's not the biggest yet or the largest, but it's
but
it's
we've
going.
got a little bit of early fruit. So let's talk a little bit about how we changed the word from advertising to media. So we started out the biggest advertising campaign for Christ. And then all these youngster consultants kept coming in here and telling us, ooh, advertising's a terrible word. We hate advertising. We do everything we can to avoid advertising. You don't want to be known as pushers of advertising.
Yeah.
And so we changed it to
media campaign.
Media campaign.
The largest media campaign.
But not only did the wording change, but we actually our type of media did change. We're still going. We still have a future. We still see a future for traditional TV, billboard advertising, etc. But
That's right.
For two reasons, we have put about 90-some% of our efforts the last 3 or 4 years on digital media.
That's right.
And digital advertising. Can you guess what the two reasons are? Can you read my mind?
The two reasons we went to digital. Well, the first reason that comes to mind is that's where people are. When you go fishing, you have to fish where the fish are, and people are on the internet. So if you want to reach them, you got to reach them on the internet. And you can't do that with billboards. You need to do that with digital billboards.
Yeah, that's kind of obvious. It's kind of like, why is everyone on the internet? Duh. Yeah, so, but that's for sure. And then I would say the younger demographic is on the internet, and we're interested in reaching them. And then a third one.
Cost?
There we go. There we go.
It's cheaper.
Well, I don't know if that's the right word. More efficient and more effective. I mean, it's just the ability of what you can do with digital advertising.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, we aren't advertising the four spiritual laws. Not that we don't have that in our broad plan. We've got some broad plans of doing some what we would call blatant stuff. But our quote unquote advertising right now is digital buys to get people to watch our YouTube views and our intriguing stories and other types of content that kind of are the bait, the intriguing stuff we talked about last week that leads people on a path toward wanting to be in a relationship with Christ. And so it's so we go into YouTube and we buy pre-roll, where you watch, you go to YouTube to watch Seinfeld, and there's a 15-second or a 3 or 4 second little trailer in front of it before you can watch it that has an ad.
Right.
And so we put our stories in there or some of our content, and if people are kind of interested in that, they'll click on it and stay on it. And we don't pay for it unless they stay on it. If they move quickly from that to Seinfeld, I wasn't interested in advertising. We don't have to pay for it. But yeah, so we go into YouTube and we make those buys. We get all these metrics. We find out, what the beard length is of the people who are watching our stuff. I mean, the types of metrics you can get is just crazy. So effectiveness, cost, the data we get back, the ability to strategize, all those reasons too have moved us into the digital age, and it's all good. We still love traditional advertising. We're a radio station.
Yep.
And so that's all part of the package too. But it has been a progression, this largest advertising campaign for Christ, which is now the largest media campaign for Christ that we are praying for and hoping for. And Mr. Billionaire, who's watching right now, you have the ability to make this happen. So just give Bob a call.
Well, that's true, but it's also true that 90% of our funding comes from everyday people with the different ministry efforts that we've been doing for 25 years. And so we're asking everyday people to help us pull off this big media campaign. We have the cost down to reach one person. That's everything, production and distribution. That's the cameras, the cameramen, everything that it takes to get it done costs a nickel. And I would ask you today, is reaching a person for Christ worth a nickel? And so your everyday person can give a nickel, or they could give, a nickel to one would be maybe $5, which would be what? 100 nickels? And so that's 100 people reached for Christ for a $5 bill, and that's pretty amazing. So as we said,
billionaires and small little donors, and we love small little donors because that's why we're sitting here at this booth right now, is because J103 was built on regular, small, faithful Christian small donors every month.
And a doctor walked in and helped us, wrote a big check to get in this building.
Yeah, so it's both, yeah.
It's a little bit of both. So good friends on all economic levels. So we're excited about pulling this off, and maybe I could take a second to share my passion that I got from meeting a couple of these young ladies in Starbucks. Here's a young lady named Mary. I actually met her at J103. She was an intern, and she told us that she was raised right here in the buckle of the Bible Belt and didn't know anything about Jesus, about being born again. Got invited to a picnic on the UTC campus and didn't even realize that it was a bunch of Christians that had invited her. And somebody made the comment, and it wasn't even directly to her. It was in a conversation that she was eavesdropping in, and the guy said that Jesus was coming back. And Mary said, He's coming back, really? So I knew historically he was here once, but I didn't know he was coming back. What's he coming back for? And that day she heard the gospel, gladly received the gospel, changed her whole life, became a missionary, and has done some incredibly cool things for Christ. And it was, it happened right here in our hometown in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that she didn't hear the gospel. And then I went to Starbucks, met another young lady that said, yeah, I was 21 and I didn't hear, never heard. And so I'm hearing that on one hand and hearing the Holy Spirit say to me, if Nike and Ford can do it, if all the big media campaigns pulled off by big corporations can do it, heck, if the Mormons can do it, then why can't we? And so that's what we're undertaking.
And one of the things that you explored or felt you got an answer to prayer was that one of the reasons we haven't done it is that, we're divided.
Well, that's true too. When you say the Christians are going to do this, well, which branch of the Christians? Is it the Lutherans, the Methodists, the Baptists, the Charismatics? And so we're in a unique position in our local area to be able to reach out to Christians across all denominational lines. And I think it's exciting that in the day and hour we're in, denominationalism is becoming less and less important. A dear Church of Christ man and his wife, with tears in their eyes, heard this vision about the biggest media campaign for Christ. This is a few years back, and wrote one of our very first donations, wrote out a check for $10,000 and said, we think it's fantastic that people across all denominational lines are going to be working together to pull off this vision that you're laying out. And he went on our site and he saw stories that we had filmed, and when you click at the end of the story to connect with this person, you see that Bob attends City Church, Bill attends Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Fred goes to the Brainerd Road Church of Christ, Gary goes to the United Methodist Church, and it was pretty cool. And he said, with tears, both husband and wife said, we've been waiting for a move of the Holy Spirit that crosses all denominational lines, and we want to get involved in this great media campaign to reach precious souls for Christ. And voila.
Yeah, and there have been some large advertising campaigns that have probably been done by churches and denominations.
Yes,
but it just wasn't enough. And the one in past history that we've identified, the I Found It campaign was Campus Crusade.
I think so.
And that is a multi-denominational effort. So they were in a position to bring lots of different Christians together. We're in a position to do that. We already do that. We've been doing that for 25 years at Partners for Christian Media. So that's a skill on the table that we hope is going to come in handy.
Yep.
I think we are good for today. And you got anything else you want to chime in there?
I was just going to give a stat that 1 billion people are on Facebook every day, and 30 million people are on YouTube every day. So that is why we're spending a lot of our efforts on digital advertising. Because if you run ads on social media, you're reaching literally hundreds of millions of people with the gospel. So join the biggest media campaign in history, The Big Share. Can I do a plug for us? Go to jointhebigshareCom and sign up to receive the stories. We'll send you stories. We'll send you fuel to the fire to get you excited about sharing gospel content and stories. You can post them organically on your social media, on your Facebook account. You can show them to friends in coffee shops, and you can give a nickel, whatever that means to you, if it's a $50 check or if it's a $50,000 check. You can give to this big media campaign for Christ, and let's reach a lot of people in the day and age when media is being used for evil. Let's use it for good and make a huge impact for Christ in America. in a day and age and time where we need it now more than ever. We need the good news and the light of the gospel to shine on the people of this great nation. We need a revival, and the revival is going to come by Christians doing more than just liking something on Facebook, but actually getting off their seats of do nothing, working together to reach people with the glorious gospel. And God's given us a way to do it, a concept, and we can all participate. No matter what church you attend, we can all do this together and reach the world for Christ. Let's do it today.
Very good. Just about to wrap up, but I got to throw this in. I got to thinking about, the story about Mary that you told, and she got the first part about Jesus coming, and, he didn't come to judge, but to save the world, and the message of love and forgiveness and all that kind of stuff. But the culture she was in left out the second part, which is he comes back as judge, and he kicks some tail. And that kind of that part of the message has gotten left out by our culture today.
Wow. It has.
Our culture that is not used to father figures that have both love and healthy fear, so that people don't grow up to be hellions. That whole thing was left out of the whatever version of the gospel she got. So that is another discussion for another day, like another 5-year seminary course for another day. But I just had to throw that in. Okay, we're good. And this is today's Bobcast. Go to today'sbobcast.com if you want to access this. And we are, I'm choking. I forgot what else I was going to say. It was another, I got to tell us who I am again. I'm Dean Arnold, your host. This is Bob LaBelle of the Bobcast, and it's been a great time talking.
Be blessed.